They told you they were doing the work. They sent you the podcast episode. They used the word boundaries like a scalpel on soft skin. And somehow, every time you walked away from a conversation with them, it was you, the one apologizing for things you didn't do. You went home and opened a private tab. You typed the words, "Am I the toxic one?" into the search bar before you even took off your coat. That moment right there is the entire game. Not the fight, the Googling after, the quiet investigation of your own sanity at midnight. Because the most dangerous person in 2026 isn't the loud one screaming in the kitchen, it's the calm one quoting your therapist at you. They know the vocabulary, they've read the books you've read. That's exactly what makes them lethal in a way the old kind never was. The old narcissist denied your reality. This new one validates it, then uses your own words to lock you inside a smaller, prettier cage. If you're still watching, do me a favor, subscribe quietly, not for the algorithm, so this finds the next person sitting where you're sitting. They'll say, "I hear you, I want to honor your feelings, but I need to protect my peace right now." Translation, stop talking, now. Watch what happens when you push back. Suddenly, your hurt becomes their trigger. Your honest question becomes their boundary violation. They didn't weaponize a dictionary, they weaponized your last 3 years of self-work. Every book on your nightstand became their ammunition. You didn't lose the argument with them, you lost access to your own perception. Those are two completely different injuries, and one doesn't heal. Picture Logan. He cheats on his girlfriend, and when she finds out, he sits her down and tells her he's processing his avoidant attachment. He cries the right amount. He uses the right words. She ends up comforting him. 6 weeks later, he does it again, and she blames her own nervous system. That's the move. They reframe their harm as your growth opportunity. Your wound becomes their content. Your tears become their case study. Notice how clean it sounds out loud. Notice how impossible it is to argue with someone whose cruelty is wearing the costume of self-help. Here's what's actually happening underneath. They didn't study therapy to change, they studied it to defend. The insight became a shield. They learned what healthy people sound like, and they copied the shape of it without ever doing the slow, ugly work that earns the shape. And underneath the shape, the same hungry kid who needed to be the smartest one in every room, dressed up in better, softer language. A real one sits with discomfort in silence. A weaponized one performs the sitting, then sends you a voice memo about how hard it was for them.
There's another move you've probably lived through. The strategic confession. They tell you their flaws before you can name them, on purpose. I know I can be emotionally unavailable sometimes. I'm working on it. Now you can't bring it up later. They got there first. They closed the door. It's preemptive accountability, a confession that ends the conversation instead of opening one. You came in thinking they were self-aware. You walked out unable to articulate why you still felt small, because the confession wasn't honesty. It was a vaccine against your future complaints. Tell me in the comments, drop the exact phrase someone used on you that sounded healthy but ended every conversation before it started. Then comes the version of boundaries that only flows in one direction. They have boundaries about your feelings. You have demands when you have needs. Think of Sienna. Her partner tells her he can't be around her when she's dysregulated, so she stops crying. Then she stops feeling. Then she stops talking. 2 years later, she doesn't recognize her own face in the bathroom mirror, and he's telling friends she became cold. He set the thermostat. A boundary in a healthy person protects connection. A boundary in this kind of person punishes you for being inconvenient. Same word, opposite job. Then comes the part where you express hurt and somehow leave with a diagnosis. You're projecting, you're triggered, you're acting from a wound. Maybe you are, but notice the sleight of hand. You came in with a real complaint. You walked out as a case study in their personal research. Your pain got pathologized. Their behavior got contextualized. The conversation moved from what they did to what's apparently broken inside you. They didn't address the harm, they relocated it right into your chest, where it sits like a small stone you can't cough up no matter how hard you try. And the worst part is, half of what they say about you is technically accurate. That's what makes the other half impossible to separate out. Watch the public version of it. They post the screenshots, they reference the trauma, they thank the people who held space for their growth. You scroll past it and realize you were one of those people, and somehow you came out looking like the villain in their highlight reel of healing. They didn't need a therapist, they needed an audience. The growth was never the destination. The story about the growth was always the point. And there's the trap underneath all the others. They use your healing as their next strategy. You go to therapy. They learn your therapist's lines by Tuesday. You come home talking about your inner child. They start talking about theirs, but bigger, louder, more wounded. You can't out-vulnerable a professional. The performance of the work quietly replaces the actual work. You're not in a relationship anymore. You're the rehearsal audience for their next role.
And then the apologies arrive. The ones that take hostages. They say sorry, but every single sentence ends with a small, lethal, "and you also." "I'm sorry I yelled, and you also raised your voice." "I'm sorry I forgot your birthday, and you also haven't been emotionally present this month." The apology is a Trojan horse. The "and" is the army inside it. By the end of the sentence, you're the one promising to do better next time. A real apology is a full stop. Theirs is always a comma. That little comma is where your reality gets buried, one conversation at a time. Picture Aubrey, 3 years in, keeping a quiet list on her phone of things he apologized for and then did again within the same month. The list got long enough that she stopped feeling angry. She just started feeling tired. And tired in these dynamics is the last stage before you leave. Now here's the part that explains the rest of it. This isn't random cruelty. It's a survival strategy that learned a brand new language fluently. Somewhere, probably young, they figured out that being seen as good was safer than actually being good. Image became oxygen. They never exhaled. Then the culture shifted. Therapy speak became social currency. Being healed was the new being successful. So they adapted, the way they always do. They didn't experience a transformation, they executed a rebrand. A polished new front end, the same hungry code running quietly underneath. And here's the part the wellness industry doesn't want to look at. The vocabulary went viral faster than the actual self-awareness ever could. So now you're sitting across from people who sound like they've done a decade of inner work and behave like they haven't done a single afternoon of it. Their nervous system never learned regulation, it learned camouflage. And those two things look identical until the moment they don't. And the reason you keep falling for it isn't because you're naive, it's because you assume people use language the way you use language, to tell the truth. Here's where it turns. The shift isn't learning new vocabulary, it's learning to watch behavior over long stretches of time, in silence, with no agenda. Healed people don't announce their healing, they just stop doing the thing. The pattern gets smaller. The same situations stop producing the same wreckage. If someone needs you to know they're working on themselves, they're usually working on how you perceive them. There's a difference, and your body knows. Drop one sentence in the comments. What was the smallest, weirdest tell that finally made you stop trusting someone's nice words? The real test isn't the good moments, it's the friction. Watch how they behave when you disagree, when you're inconvenient, when you stop being useful.
That's where the curtain slips. Not in the romantic moments, in the unwatched moments, when there's nothing left for them to gain by performing. Start trusting the small things, the shift in their tone when you said no, the pause that lasted a half second too long. Your body knew before you did. And stop arguing with them in their vocabulary. You don't have to prove they're not healed. You just have to stop auditioning for their version of you. The exit isn't a confrontation. It's a quiet internal decision that their fluency is no longer evidence except how much they've practiced. You don't owe a fluent manipulator a fluent response. You don't owe them a closing argument. You don't owe them one more chance to use your words. The hardest part of leaving this kind of person isn't missing them. It's grieving the version of them that existed only in their carefully chosen sentences. That version was real to you. It was never real to them. They were quoting a person they had no intention of becoming, and you were the only one trying. Here's the hard truth. Some people learned the language of healing the way thieves learn the language of locksmiths, not to open anything, but to get inside. And here's the freeing one. You don't need to translate yourself for them anymore. Silence is a complete sentence. So is the door closing behind you. If you stayed with me to the end, the next time someone says all the right things and leaves you feeling all the wrong ones, believe the feeling.